And put a cat face on it. Put a cat face on a grapefruit in a onesie. That's you, Basil. That's you for sure.
Hey everybody, your buddy Basil here, and you are listening to the Joyspiracy Theory. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for coming back for another episode, everybody. We've got an awesome episode, an interview with Rhonda, who's been a listener for a long time, and you guys are going to love it. This was a really, really fun one. We talk a lot about, a lot of bees. Talk a lot about bees and some flowers and church and marriage and brain surgery and all sorts of fun stuff. She's from North Carolina, so what's up, all you North Carolina listeners? But before we get to it there, I want to thank everybody who has supported the Patreon. I have started doing a new little series there. Well, I've done the first one. We'll see if you guys like it enough. A series called Ask Baz, where all the questions that you guys send in, I get a lot of questions all the time, and sometimes it's just really hard to get to them all, or they slip through the cracks or get pushed down in the inbox or whatever. But this is a way for me to answer questions from you guys. It has everything to do with either myself or thoughts about life or faith or joy or mental health or whatever. Guns, maybe? You got questions about guns? What? Give me a call. Give me a call. You're on the line. No, but you can send questions to basil.rosewater@gmail.com. And if you want to get access to that first episode of Ask Baz, you can head over to the Patreon, and it's available to the Patreon supporters at any level. And if you got questions, you can go ahead and send them in, and maybe I'll answer them on that show. Okay. Other than that, thanks for everybody who's following the Facebook group and leaving iTunes reviews and everything like that. It's certainly helping out the show. And, if you want to leave me a voicemail or something, go to thejoyspiracytheory.com. There's a little voicemail tab on the side there, and maybe it'll get played on the show. Who knows? Who knows? It's a mystery. Okay, guys, well, get ready for this episode. It's going to certainly be a joyful one, and Rhonda has just had such an interesting life filled with interesting things, and certainly has a lot to say about the joy that is to be found. So, all right, guys, buckle your seatbelts. Here we go, and let's hit it with that Skype ringtone.
Hello.
Rhonda, how are you?
I'm pretty good.
Good. I'm just so impressed by your sound quality. It gets me.
That's funny.
Yes. Oh.
Go ahead.
No, I'm interested in what you were about to say.
I was just going to say it's like an old iPhone 5 headset and microphone thing plugged into my Samsung laptop. So I'm mixing it up, Apple and Samsung.
You're crossing borders, building bridges. You're really
It's dangerous. It's dangerous territory.
You're doing the Lord's work, Rhonda.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we get into it here, tell me what you're grateful for today.
Oh, goodness. Today, I was grateful for sunshine and warmer weather. North Carolina has been really, really strange. We've had bipolar weather a lot lately. So
North Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it has been, it's been cold. And usually by this time of year, we do not have freezes. But we had it was 30 degrees overnight on this past weekend. So yeah, just crazy. But I'm just thankful for sunshine. It was a beautiful day.
Well, that's good. I don't really have any, as I'm constantly reminded on this show, I don't really have any context for specifically what the weather in North Carolina is supposed to be like.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense if you don't live here.
Is that one of the hot zones? Is that in the Is that in the
we can
South? What is that?
Yeah, it's one of the, I guess, a southern state. And we are usually I guess by this time of year, mid to upper 70s, and then we get, 80s, 90s in the summer. So yeah, it gets hot, but
Okay.
it's
Okay.
just been super, super crazy this year. The weather's been odd for
Well,
sure.
that's what I hear, especially over there on the East Coast. You got all
Yep.
sorts of Genesis vortex bombs and polar bears
Yeah,
walking around.
right. Yep,
Wow.
that's it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're surviving. Did you have any like emergency situations where the town shut down and the
No,
no?
thankfully, no. We now, yeah, I guess you can say because it's always a snowpocalypse every time they forecast that here. People run to the stores and get milk and bread so they can make milk and bread sandwiches, I guess. But it is
Wait,
just,
wait, wait.
yeah, it's kind of a
You're
joke
talking to a
around here.
West Coast boy, okay? You can't just say milk and bread sandwiches and I don't know
And
if
pass
I
on
I
by.
don't know if that's a joke or not. Is that a real
Yeah,
thing?
it's really what people do. I mean, in North Carolina, and I'm guessing probably other places, because we don't always get really severe winter weather. When we do have ice and snow, people go to the store and just completely clean out all of the milk, all of the bread, and it's really bad planning. Like I tend to go to the grocery stores on Fridays, and if there just happens to be a bad weather event, I'm kind of out of luck if my family wants milk or bread.
Oh, so it's okay.
So
So it's more of a kind of tongue-in-cheek thing just because
yeah,
milk and bread seem to be the priorities in those
yeah, I
moments.
guess. But
That's
like, what are
funny.
you gonna do with like loaf of bread and milk?
Yeah,
Is that really what's gonna sustain you? I
no,
mean,
that seems like a hilarious like cultural
it
quirk
is.
over there.
It
That's very
is.
funny.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Do people like like is that a known joke or is that a funny thing you just made up because you're a comedian?
No, like it becomes a meme that people pass around all over social media whenever anything like that happens or in this area. Time to go get your milk and bread for your milk and bread sandwiches or
That's
whatever.
very funny. I like that
Yeah,
a lot.
it's great.
I was about to like with in the spirit of like cultural cross cultural education. I was going to commit to trying a bread and milk sandwich. So thank you for not playing into my ignorance and letting me do that. Although, I mean, really, it's just dipping bread in milk. I mean, there's nothing
I
wrong with
guess
that. Bread's good,
I
milk's
don't get
good.
it.
That's like
Well, I'm
the
allergic to
whitest
both.
thing I've ever heard. But
Yeah. I'm allergic to dairy and to gluten. So for me, it's like that would be the death of me if that's literally all I could eat.
that is so funny.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
but are you like so you're in you're like the mom who's allergic to things but still buy it for everybody else or I guess that was a
exactly.
big
Yep.
assumption I just made, but
Yeah. Nope. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I do.
okay. Well, that's very
Yep.
nice of you to just like surround yourself with poison for the good of your
Right.
because though those
Yeah.
kids they can't be drinking almond milk. They need the cow juice.
I know. And here's what's terrible. My oldest daughter was actually allergic to cow's milk when she was a baby. Like, but she tested positive for the allergy until she was like 5 years old. And the doctor told her she could go home and have chocolate for the first time. And she hated it. But since then, she thinks that, it would be terrible for her to stop having dairy, even though, like, from what I've read, you don't really get over that. It just kind of internalizes the way the allergy is affecting you. And so you have like an inflammatory response in other parts of your body.
Right,
So,
right. That's it.
yeah.
Yeah, I've heard about that. People kind of get not getting over it, but it just manifests itself in different ways, and you just
Yeah.
sort of learn to live with it.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
that's too bad,
It's
especially in this culture we live in that's just filled with dairy products.
I know. And like right now I'm doing the keto stuff and I'm on like day 3 and I can't have cheese or like the heavy whipping cream that people put in their bulletproof coffee and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it's kind of miserable, but I'm surviving.
Well, that's good. You survived the winter storms, and you're surviving the dairy storm.
Yep, that's right.
I'm very proud of you. So you're doing the keto thing. That's interesting. Now,
Yeah.
I'm constantly having to try to not make this a nutrition podcast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But that's fascinating. That's one of those things I'm sure you've heard on the show. I'm a fan of the Whole 30, which has similar restrictions, but a totally
Right.
different thing. But
I like Whole30 a lot better, but that's just my 2 cents.
okay, okay. Well,
Yep.
there we go. Another check on the Whole30 board there. I'm gonna need to get sponsored by that organization here soon.
Yeah,
I'm like,
you should be like rolling in the dough by now with
well,
all of like the little free advertisement you
well,
get.
right. Well, that's what I'm saying. For a non-nutrition show, like that's not what this show's about. Not is not even close to what this show's about.
Right.
I'm probably the biggest evangelist for Whole30. Uh, like again, just out of context evangelist for Whole30. But
Right.
anyways,
Right.
we'll save the rest of that conversation for later because I'm very interested. But I know people will just start. They'll abandon me if we start on the nutrition
I
stuff
gotcha.
this early.
Yep.
Okay, so you're over there in North Carolina. What's your favorite thing about being over there? Like, what's your
Oh,
favorite thing about North Carolina? Because I hear it's a very everybody I've known, which is pretty much just you, likes likes North Carolina. Like, it just seems very pleasant. I think maybe
it
that's
is.
just kind of they have good PR. There's maybe unremarkable, and I mean that in a good way. Like nobody talks about how
I
horrible North Carolina is.
Right. I think that it is probably the best of everything because we're just like a couple hours drive to the beach, couple hours drive to the mountains. I mean, you can get to the bigger cities without, too much hassle, and you still can enjoy like the rural suburban kind of life or whatever. And it's just nice. I mean,
Does it
you've got
does it have big
cute.
bugs? It seems like one of those places that would have a lot of bugs.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, we have mosquitoes in the summertime, but they're not like giant mosquitoes like they talk about in Texas. Like that would be like a game changer for me. I would not
Right.
leave the house.
It's not like
Um,
Jumanji sized
no,
insects
no.
running around. Okay.
We have like, I mean, we have bees, but that's
Well, that's
everywhere
good.
too.
You're probably
So
the last people who actually have bees.
you know,
Congratulations.
the people across the street from me actually have beehives,
That
so
is
it's
very
kind of
cool.
nice.
I've
Yeah.
I've actually considered that I have family who do the beehive thing, and it seems really fun. It just seems like a lot of work, you know?
Right. Yeah, my dad did that when I was little, and so I grew up around beehives and stuff. So I've always thought it was kind of neat, and I love honey and all that kind of stuff. But I was petrified of bees as a kid, so
Your
that's
dad,
not it. That's not my calling to be a beekeeper.
that's so funny. I'm seeing like some strange pattern here. So you're petrified of bees, and
Yeah,
your father raised bees. Is that maybe why you keep milk around, even though like you're intolerant of milk? You're
that's
just like
exactly it.
you
I
were,
love to torture
yeah,
myself. I'm a sadist.
you were
That's it.
raised to suffer, is what it was. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds very interesting. What was your childhood context there, where your dad was able to raise bees?
So we live in like pretty much smack dab in the middle of North Carolina. And we live in this big country county, even though we're close to cities, but it's just like farm county basically. And so when my parents bought their house, they live literally next door to me. We just moved into the house next door to them last year, but there were not a lot of people in the neighborhood. And so he had like little beehives in the back corner of our yard because he grew up in the mountains and loved, everything to do with gardening and stuff like that. So we had like a fruit orchard and a big, huge garden and all kinds of stuff. So he thought having bees was just like the right thing to do.
Sure, yeah.
If you want to have good crops, then you have bees. So that's why he did that.
Oh, well, I mean, it seems pretty smart to me. Um, you know what's so interesting, and I'm always surprised about this show because inevitably something comes up that directly relates to the current thing going on in my life. And maybe I bring it upon myself, but this time it was definitely you. And that is literally like a half hour before we got on the line here. I was at the dollar store and just picking up, random dollar store things that you need.
Right.
Um, and they had a gardening section because it's springtime. They put up this little gardening section, and I spent
Mhm.
like $15 on gardening supplies, which $15 is pretty cheap for gardening supplies, but
Yeah.
that'll buy a lot of stuff at the dollar store. So
Yeah.
literally right before we got on the line, I washed my hands from potting some plants and planting some bulbs just out on my
Nice.
balcony here. I've never really been a gardener guy, but that seemed like the right thing to do at the time. I was just kind of led by the spirit.
Yeah, I have already put a lot of things in the ground. So I had to cover them up when we had our little freeze this past weekend. But
Oh,
yeah, I've got lots of
right.
new flowers planted and stuff. So yeah.
Well, that's very fun. So, do you take after your dad? Do you have kind of that green thumb, or is it just kind of what you do in North Carolina? Again, it
Well,
seems just like a North Carolina thing.
I think some people do, but I don't think it's necessarily a North Carolina thing. I love flowers. I just do. So if I can put more color in my yard, then I'm going to have it full of all different colors
What
of pretty things.
what you
So
got? What you got? You got those bulbs? You got
yeah, I've
bulbs or
got
seeds? What do you like, girl? Bulbs or seeds?
bulbs because they're perennial. They come back every year and I don't have to worry about planting more stuff and spending more money on it.
Okay, let me just write that down here. Learning
Yep.
something about
Bulbs
gardening.
are perennial. Yeah.
Seeds were a big mistake. Okay, there we
No, not always.
go.
Sometimes they reseed themselves. So you may get some return on that.
It actually starts. So this was kind of a building thing, and now this is a gardening show. So everybody just get used to it. So this has been like a bit. There was something leading up to me impulse buying a garden, which was the other day. I don't know. I don't know if you do this in North Carolina as young children in elementary school. One of these fun projects was our teacher gave us beans, and you put the
Mhm.
beans, you wrap them in a wet paper towel, and then you put that wet paper towel in a Ziploc bag, and then you put the Ziploc
Yes,
bag in your desk, and it's like in 3 days you've got like a Jack and the Beanstalk situation going
right.
on.
Yes.
Uh,
There's the sprout that comes out of that and everything. Yeah.
That's
Hmm.
exactly right. And I just
Yep.
did that. And I did that about a week ago. And then I forgot about them. It's one of those things I cannot tell you what possessed me to do this. It's not a normal thing, but it was just like I was bored for a second. And I put beans in a paper towel and I did it and I hid
Oh
them
my
in a
goodness.
little, funny enough, I have like a little, it's not quite an antique, but it's kind of like an antique school desk in my apartment
Right.
here.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what inspired it. And I put it in that desk to like do it exactly right, as if the beans wouldn't sprout like anywhere else. Like they have to be in a school desk.
It has to be in the school desk because it's got magic powers.
That's
It's
right.
like, did you ever read Indian in the Cupboard when you were a kid?
You know what? I didn't read it, but I love the
Okay.
movie. I
Okay,
got
so
the
I
movie
never saw the
version.
movie. But yeah, we read the book when I was in school, and I used to think that if I would stick things like little plastic figurines in the medicine cabinet, like behind the mirror in the bathroom, that something would come to life. And I was so disappointed when it didn't happen. But yeah, I guess
Okay.
that's similar.
Rhonda, again with the weird things that match my life. This whole oh my gosh, this show is amazing. I'm never gonna stop just because it just reaffirms my entire life. So it only occurred to me the other day that so like you're saying, you put the toy in the cupboard and you want it to come to
Right.
life, right?
Yeah.
But the thing was that it wasn't the cupboard that was magic.
It
It
was the
was the
key.
key.
I know, I
That blew
know,
my mind. I just thought
I
about that
know.
the other day. It changed my entire childhood.
Oh, yeah. I also knocked on the back of my closet door thinking that there was going to be a cupboard that opened up into Narnia or like a closet door that
Oh,
would open
right.
into Narnia there. So,
Yeah, I
yeah, I was a
was,
little bit of a crazy imaginative kid.
well, those kids and their imagination. Although I
Yeah.
was I was excruciatingly aware of the difference between a wardrobe and a closet. Because
Oh, that's good. I
yeah,
did not know the difference.
no, nope. See, that's where you went wrong.
Yep.
Closets don't work. That's where the boogeyman hides. Um, but
You're not wrong.
but so the ending of my riveting bean story uh
Yes.
was that I forgot about them and I left them in there for like maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks,
Ooh,
and they started like
growing things
yeah,
like mold.
helpless, yeah, like helpless monsters. They were were starting to like grow, trying to break out of the bag, like go through the
Ooh,
zipper, and also
wow.
yes, lots of mold. um
Nice.
but don't worry, everybody, just before recording this show I transferred those beans to a pot. So
Yeah. We'll pray that they'll sprout and make lots of fruitful beans.
oh, yeah, they're doing good. I mean, they're the little sprouts. They're big sprouts. They're kind of
Yeah.
like mutated, grotesque looking things right now. And I didn't. I don't know if this is right. Maybe you can help me. I was like, oh, beans, like they need something to climb up. Um, so I looked all around my house to put something in the pot that these beans could like climb, and the only thing I had were plastic straws that have uh, tissue paper poofy flamingos on them. So
Okay, can you please take a picture of that and post it as an image for this episode? Because that would be great.
I
Like,
will. I will definitely post it. In fact, I thought about that a little bit while I was doing it. I'm like,
oh my
I have to
goodness.
show the world. Um,
It may work. It may work. They may
how,
climb that.
we'll see. Maybe the beans will devour the flamingos. I don't know. We'll see. Well,
That would be hilarious.
yeah. Oh, if the cats don't eat them, my cats have been kind of a little too curious in these brand new pots of dirt around the
Yeah.
house.
Oh yeah.
So I'm sure I'll find some little surprises later.
Fun.
Okay. Wow. Gardening. I don't think I've ever talked that long about gardening on this show before. See, this is fun. We're breaking new ground.
That's right. That's right. We're not going where we've never gone before.
I know, we're really doing it. Okay. So you grew up. Your dad was a beekeeper.
Mhm.
Apparently he did a very good job of protecting you from the bees. Uh,
Yes.
I mean, it sounds like kind of like a nice childhood. How'd that go?
Yeah. It was a pretty good childhood. I'm the middle child of five. And
Ooh,
my mom and dad have been married for eternity, and they're still married. And my dad worked. He was a long distance truck driver, and my mom
wow.
stayed home with all of us. So, like, just the perfect life, because
So
how many people get a stay at home mom and like home cooked meals every day? And just, yeah, it was
that
great.
is awesome. Although it is starting to become clear to me that when you say your dad raised bees, you mean your dad let bees loose in your yard and then drove away for
Okay,
weeks on
so
end.
beekeeping is not like a constant maintaining kind of thing, unless you
Okay.
have lots and lots of hives.
Uh-huh.
Thankfully, otherwise, like my whole house would have been overrun with like 1,000 honeybees everywhere. Yeah, that would have been terrible. That would have been like death to bees forever for me.
Just say, guys, love you. Hey, I got some bees. Bye. Have fun. That's
Yeah,
funny.
it was
Well,
like that.
well, that sounds nice. That sounds very nice. Were you a church going family back in the day there?
Yes, we were. And it's funny. I was at the same church until last year, like the same church that I went to from the time I was 2 weeks old. That was my
Wow.
first appearance in church. And it's like I actually went more than my parents because my mom was like continuing to have children after me. And so after a baby would be born, she would take like this hiatus from church for a little while just to take care of the baby.
Yeah.
And my aunt would come and get me and take me to church with her. So I would go even when my parents weren't going. So it was like that was my life. I loved church. I loved everything about it as a kid and even as I grew up until like teenage years when a lot of people do the whole run away from church and do bad things. But,
Sure.
um, but yeah, same church for like the entirety of my life until last year when the Lord was like, not anymore, sister, you're gone. So yeah,
You
we left.
go. Well,
You're gone.
that's really interesting. I mean, that's a wow. That's an amazing relationship to have with a church. I mean, that young. I was kind of the same way. I kind of like made my family go to church.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they had we had gone to church earlier in my life, and then kind of stopped, and then I think I think I've told this story on the show before. I had family of 7 kids or 5 kids, something like that. I don't remember.
Right. Like
Um,
my family,
yeah,
5 kids. Yeah.
kind of like your family, and they would take me to church. And then I was finally like, I don't. My mom says I was very forceful about making them go to church. I'm sure somebody at church said something where I felt very guilty that my parents weren't going.
Right. Right.
So that's very interesting. I was kind of the same way. So what was this? What happened last year? What's the Lord telling you about moving on?
So it's a little bit of a long story, but I don't mind going into it because it's really neat. So a few years, well, yeah, like 2012, my husband and I had kind of had some like marital issues, and so we separated for like 6 months. Both went to counseling, and we are obviously back together now,
Uh-huh.
thankfully. But during that time,
Obviously.
yeah, during that time, we were visiting some other churches just because, when you're going through stuff like that, I mean, you don't know, you're not married, but you can assume that when you're going through something like that, your church kind of feels like they have to take sides, maybe,
Yes.
you
That was going to
know,
be my question.
and yeah, there were some rumors and things that were completely unfounded, and so um, I I felt like we needed to visit other churches just for our own sanity during that time
Were
period.
you going to the same church while you were separated, or did somebody's
We
absence kind of fuel some of those rumors?
so my husband worked every other Sunday. So on the Sundays that he was off, he would take our children and go to our regular church. And then on the Sundays when he worked, I would go there with the children. But on the Sundays when he was there, I would go visit a different church
I mean,
because I
this
just found
seems
there
like
was like a ministry there that they were, really kind of pouring into me, and it was great.
well,
So
that's very
yeah,
nice. I mean,
yeah,
that seems like a pretty amicable situation.
yeah. I mean, we didn't have basically we just had brought a lot of baggage into our marriage that we needed, to kind of deal with. And I think as when we separated within a month, we knew there was no chance we were going to divorce or anything, but we both just really had a lot of stuff we needed to uncover and deal with in our lives from our past. And I think that really like strengthened our relationship and brought us back stronger. And yeah, it was great.
Wow, that's very interesting. I've never had a conversation about marriage separation with such a cheery attitude. This is
Yeah,
this is really
yeah.
nice. I mean, I'm happy that you guys figured things out there. How long had you been married before the separation?
7 years.
7 years. Okay, so
Yep.
you both just had some deep, dark secrets that you were holding on to for 7 years.
I mean, the first 7 years of our marriage were like crazy. I mean, for us to survive it, it had to be completely a God thing because, okay, so yeah, here goes.
So lots
Um,
of bees and snowstorms, I'm guessing.
yeah, yeah. No, I had some medical issues. I had to have brain surgery like just a few
Whoa.
months after we were married. So yeah, and so with things like that, and that was just sort of the first of a lot of things that happened during that time period, and it, I think like we were just at the point where we were so tired and he was just working himself to death and I was staying home with the kids and I think we kind of just drifted apart and um like I felt like I was being ignored and he felt like everything was fine, but his anger was really bad because his job and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, so yeah, like the reason why we separated, it was absolutely necessary. And God made it really clear to me in that time, even that, this was something that he wanted for us to do, not to separate with the intention of never coming back together, but to separate so that he could heal us,
Yeah.
individually. And so it turned out to be a really good thing. And like I said, we're a lot stronger now.
Well, that's great.
So
Now, I want to take a step back for just a second,
yeah,
just because I'm very
yeah, that
curious.
whole bomb of a brain tumor, yeah,
Well,
brain
sure,
surgery, yeah,
sure. Okay, so tumor. All right, I'm putting the clues together here.
yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm curious as just to what it is or what the situation was, but also, did you know that this was an impending issue as you got married, or is this something that just kind of sprang up?
Okay, so I was diagnosed with what they called sphenoid wing meningioma in 2003, and I was a single mom and young at the time, and so it was kind of scary. But I had surgery then. It was like a 15-hour surgery, so super crazy. And the doctor thought he had taken out enough that it would not regrow. There's a piece there that he said if he took it, I would be like Helen Keller, so deaf, dumb, and blind.
Whoa.
Yeah, right. So he left that little piece and said, okay, there's like a 3% chance this is going to grow. Well, me being me, I like to grow things apparently, and that includes tumors.
Full
So yeah.
circle.
So the year that my husband and I got married, we actually eloped a week after we found out I was going to have surgery again.
What?
So yeah, I think I
Wow.
was kind of like, I think that was me like, he's not going to marry me if my face is all screwed up after surgery.
Wait, so
So
did
we're going
he
to do
know
this
about
now.
this, or was this a secret?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
All
he went
right.
to the
You
doctor
weren't
with me and
just
everything.
trying to
No, I didn't
trap
pull
him
him
in
fast
your
on him.
web of medical
No, thankfully.
expenses.
No, thankfully. Yeah. So I had a second surgery. We were married in March of 2005 and I had surgery in June. So we had already bought a house and then I went through the surgery and had to leave my job. And so yeah, it was a little bit of a hard first year and um but I mean, he handled it very, very well considering, he had no idea what he was getting into.
Yeah, I mean, what was it? Was he? I guess he didn't really know exactly what he was getting into, and I'm sure he obviously he loved you at the time, so he was. It's
Right.
kind of one of those beautiful stories that
Yeah.
that
Yeah, he's a pretty
yeah.
great. Yeah. Um, so yeah, and then we had our first child together in 2007. So in like March of 2007. So I was pregnant through half of 2006. So that was another little, just big event kind of thing that happens in your marriage. And then between 2007
You're
and
talking
2000,
having your first child, is what you're saying?
yes, our
Okay,
first child together, because like I said, I was a single mom when we
got
first
it,
got married.
got it.
Um, But then I had three miscarriages between
Oh
our
my,
first child together and our next child together. So yeah, that was
that's
definitely
difficult.
something that absolutely caused me to have just some emotional unrest in everything. And just like it really made me struggle in my faith, simply because I didn't understand like why are you doing this to me, God? And so I think that that probably had a lot of impact on our marriage and
Yeah, I
on why
bet.
things went the way they did. Yeah. So in 2010, we finally had a little boy. And so, yeah, that completed our family. We were done after that. I said, I cannot stand the thought of losing more children.
Yeah, I
So,
bet that was a huge relief.
yes, absolutely. And so we have three sweet children now. And they're all amazing kids. And
How
yeah, so
how old are they now?
so my oldest is 16 and my middle child is 11 and my son is 7.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah,
so you're pretty well into it.
that's right.
Good for you. Good for
I
you.
know. No
Wow.
more diaper changing for this mama. For now, anyway. Who knows? Maybe I'll foster or adopt one day.
Oh, that's a very sweet thought for sure, and I'm sure your husband sounds like the guy who would just jump right in with 2 feet without
Yep,
knowing what he's getting into. Um, and
for
so
sure.
how was it for the kids when you guys split a little bit? I mean, was that a kind of an open conversation, or what was that like?
Well, I think my kids were Colt. My son was too young to even remember any of that,
Yeah.
because he was like a toddler. I think he was 18 months old or something. Um, and then our daughters, both of them were. I don't. They never really seemed like it concerned them a whole lot. I think the biggest thing was when I moved out of our home and took the children with me, and I moved into a two-bedroom house, and there were four of us, so that was interesting. And I think that was their biggest thing that they didn't like. Like my girls had to share a room for the first time, and they were like, "Oh, this is too small. We're not used to this." But it wasn't because my husband and I stayed in touch so much. Like even in our separation, we weren't like constantly separated, you
Sure,
know.
sure. Now I gotta
Mm.
say, you certainly have had your share of down downsides in life, and certainly that's a topic of conversation on this show that happens a lot. But you wouldn't know it by talking to you. You seem like a very happy person.
Well, you can. I remember, like, I don't know if I heard it in a sermon or if I read it in a book, but I had heard this thing years ago about like when you're on a path, and you come to a boulder, are you going to climb under it and just lay there for a life and let the boulder be on top of you, or are you going to go around or go over it? Because that's the only way to get through life. And so I think just kind of like coming at things with that knowledge and knowing that God is in control and he has a plan and he's sovereign, and, he works all things together for good to those that love him and are called according to his purpose. And so like, it didn't matter what I faced. And he spoke so clearly to me during a lot of those times that I didn't have any reason to necessarily be down and like, in a bad place,
Right.
like when I first was diagnosed with a brain tumor, I remember I was working for a law firm, and I had gone to the doctor because I was having horrid headaches and like vision problems and hearing stuff. And they tried to say it was anxiety. And I'm like, I don't think so. I've kind of lived like I sort of thrive in stressful situations a lot of times.
Sure.
And so I'd been like a stress motivated person, I guess. So I knew that wasn't what it was, but he was like, okay, well, I'm going to send you to the hospital for a CT scan. And then if, when I get the results, I'll let you know. But after that, I want you to go see a psychiatrist or whatever. And this was like a Thursday when I had the CT scan, and he called me at my office on Monday, and he was like, well, you said you hate going to the doctor, so I'm just telling you over the phone. I need you to come in today. You have a brain tumor and it's the size of a grapefruit.
Oh,
And
a
I'm like,
grapefruit? How does a
yeah.
grapefruit?
And so
How do you have room for a grapefruit in your head? I don't get it.
it smashes your brain down pretty big,
Oh,
I mean, it was like massive pressure inside my head. So
that's
yeah, it was kind of
crazy.
painful. Yeah, it was nuts.
I'm pretty sure a
But
grapefruit is as big as my head.
we have a really small head then. You'll have to
I'm
take a picture of that and
I'm
post it
just a
too.
little
Like the back
baby.
of your head is less than grapefruit.
It'll be a grapefruit
Oh my goodness.
in a onesie, a little baby onesie.
Right?
I've been a
That would
baby
be
the whole
great.
time.
And put a cat face on it. Put a cat face on a grapefruit in a onesie. That's you, Basil.
Little.
That's you for sure.
Okay, well,
Oh, that's funny.
we have established some more lore on this episode, so we're just gonna canonize that. Um, a grapefruit-headed
Oh, good.
cat baby.
That's right.
That might be the episode title.
My
Now that I
goodness.
think about it. Just
Oh my
gonna
goodness.
write that
Okay.
down. Grapefruit-headed cat baby. Okay,
Cat face.
that's
Baby.
really gonna confuse me later when I go over my notes again. Okay, so all
Oh,
right,
that's good though.
so your brain is all squished. You got a grapefruit in your head.
Right.
That's really intense. Okay, then what?
Yeah. So when the doctor called, I was in the middle of like typing responses to interrogatories, which if you know anything about law stuff, they'll send these papers that with like all these questions and the person is supposed to fill it out in their like with their hands or whatever. They just write their answers. And then whoever is the person working at the law firm, like I had to type all that back up to send it back to the opposing counsel. And I was in the middle of that and I was so sucked in. I told the doctor, he was like, I need you to come in right away. I said, well, can you wait till my lunch break? I'm in the middle of something. And so I finished that and then just kind of had a little meltdown, sobbing and bawling like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I left there and went to the doctor's office and the receptionist was like, well, he left for lunch already. He took an early lunch because he thought you were going to come during your lunch break. And so I had to wait in the office for like an hour for him to return. And I'm like, really obviously distraught. And people are looking at me really funny in the doctor's office because, this is a big, huge public waiting room.
You're probably terrifying people or making them
Right,
feel better
right.
about their sinus infection.
Right. So I pick up a magazine trying to hide my face because I see all these people staring. And I open it up and they're like, on the page that I opened it up to, it said second chances in big bold print all across the top of both pages. And God just kind of gave me peace in that moment and said, look, this is not the end of your story. This is just a beginning of a new chapter for you. And I've
Wow.
got you. And so like I had so much peace like right then that I set the magazine down and like composed myself. And so when I met with the doctor, he's telling me all of this stuff like, these are the risks and this is what's going on. And, it's very rare at your age, blah, blah, blah. And then he looks at me and he's like, you're handling this all so well. He's like, I have to ask you a personal question. Are you a believer? And I was like, yeah. He was like, because I see Jesus all over you right now.
Wow,
And it
that's
was
so
just
cool.
those things that you never think about happening in a doctor's office because this was like an urgent care type facility, just like a quickie med kind of place.
Yeah.
And I'd never been there before. So I didn't have any medical history there or anything because I really never went to the doctor for anything. So yeah, it was totally just
Wow.
confirming that God was all over this.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it's hard to be too upset when, you hit that page in the magazine, which, I totally am in line. I totally believe that was a message from God. But, somebody more cynical could just be like, well, you opened a magazine to cover your mascara-stained face.
Right.
But then, having that change in your countenance so much so that the doctor is like baffled by your behavior.
Right.
And, is
Yeah, I
getting
think he kind of thought maybe it was the tumor that was doing that originally.
I guess that's totally valid too. What if that's what he said? Like, mind if I ask you a personal question? You are aware you have a giant tumor, right?
Right.
Are you like cool with that? No, but that's very cool that so was he, I'm assuming he was a believer too.
Oh yeah, for sure. He prayed over me and he pestered the neurosurgeon who ended up doing my surgery so much so that the neurosurgeon saw me in the middle of a surgery. The man came out in his scrubs with blood all over them, eating a pack of crackers to look at my stuff. No. I'm not even lying. It was so bizarre. It was so bizarre.
That's like something that would happen in like Scrubs or something. Like, I don't know if you ever saw that show, but
yes, I did. I loved it.
Oh, hold on. I need a little snack break. I got to talk to some tumor lady. Wow.
That was
awesome.
it. And I mean, I had like a 5-minute meeting with this doctor and he was like, okay, well, my break's over. I got to get back in here and get this guy's head closed back up. And I'm going, is he for real? And his nurse looks at me like, yeah, he's for real.
Wow. I mean, I guess that guy's under anesthesia or something.
I have no idea. It's bizarre.
Although from my extensive medical knowledge from watching House and Scrubs, I don't know if they put a brain surgery patients under anesthesia. I suppose that would be an excellent question for the person I'm talking to who's had brain surgery. Do they put you under anesthesia for that stuff?
It depends on your tumor. It depends on what parts of your brain it is affecting. If it's something that's going to affect your like your ability to speak or your cognitive or motor abilities, then they may leave you awake so that they can, like
Test, make sure they're
um
doing good.
yeah, like push on that part of the brain and see if you're still working well, if you can still
Yes.
recognize a horse or whatever.
That is the
So
most
that
comedic and brutally morbid thing I've ever heard, but that is hilarious. I don't know if you can
I was
tell by the
asleep.
tone in my
I was
voice.
asleep.
Okay. All right. They put you to sleep. That's very nice of them.
Yes. Yes, exactly. I don't think I could have handled it otherwise.
Wow. And then
Yeah.
they just popped out a little grapefruit. And so
They
was
just,
that? It was
yeah.
just done? You spent some time in the hospital and
Yeah, I was in the hospital for like 5 days and I lost vision in my left eye. So I'm legally blind in my left eye.
oh, completely. Or
And
still, huh?
yeah, yep. Yeah, it's fun though.
It's fun not
My
having
husband
that
walks up. Yeah. My husband will walk up on my left side and hold his arms out like he's gonna give me a hug and I'll just walk away. So
You'd think he'd
so he
remember, but I
forgets.
suppose that's the sort of thing that just keeps the relationship exciting.
Right. And so I had a second surgery, like I said, in 2005 after we were married. And after that surgery, like I could not put words together properly. Like I couldn't come up with like descriptive nouns. Like for instance, like the air conditioner or something. I would say like popsicle because it
The
was
cold
cold.
box, the Berber
Right.
box.
And so my sister and I, she's like 7 years younger than me, but we made jokes about brain tumors so much that people thought we were really like messed up in the head. Because, it's just how you deal with stuff, right? And so
Right.
if I would say stuff like that, she would laugh at me and say, your giblets are jabbering again because of the piece of the tumor that was left in my brain. Or she would say, like, the tumor's talking again.
That is
So
so
we would
funny.
laugh.
So you
Yeah,
got
but
a good attitude.
oh yeah, if you can't laugh at it, then what are you gonna do?
No, that's hilarious. I'd like to think, who knows what I would do. I could do any number of things. I would probably just keep trying to grow more beans in different places, but I would like to think that I would.
In your brain, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. Any space in there
Out
for
your
these,
ears.
baby? Yeah, my beans are talking again. Um, well, that's very cool. So your sister, so she's kind of a cool cat like you, then.
Yeah, she's pretty funny.
She said
Yep.
ominously.
Oh, we have had like times when we've been super close, and then other times when we're like she and I are both sort of introverted in a way. Like we can talk all day, but you're probably not going to get a lot out of us
Sure.
unless we just want to tell you. And so we have our little sessions where we might get together and really cling to each other, and then other times it's like I'm too tired, just don't bother me.
Totally, totally. I
So
totally get it. But it's
yeah.
good that you have that understanding of each other.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
What about your husband?
She's great.
Is your husband an introvert or more extroverted guy?
He is an extrovert. He could make friends with a wall. I mean, he honestly knows no
Some people
strangers.
call that crazy, but yeah, extroverted is good too.
Like, no, when you have a brain tumor, it makes you crazy. So I can call it whatever I
Yeah,
want
that
to.
might be normal in your household, I guess.
No
Well,
doubt, no
that's
doubt.
good. So here's the thing: does he understand the introverted plight? Is he has that been a contentious or a beautiful understanding thing in your marriage? Let me just dive into
It
your
just
marriage real
depends.
deep here.
Yeah, yeah. It just depends. I think that, because okay, so when we were back together as a couple, our pastor had asked us if we would take over the youth ministry, and so we were made youth leaders. And I can speak in front of crowds all day long. I don't have an issue with that. but one-on-one conversation and like talking about like what's bothering me and things like that, you're not going to get it out of me. It's just
Ah,
not going to happen.
yeah.
And
Okay, so
so,
you're a troublemaker in the relationship. I know your type. I
right?
know your
Yes, I
type.
am. I'm the one. What's wrong? Nothing.
Nothing. I'm
Yeah, that's
fine.
me. Yeah, that's
Rawr.
me.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, so your husband's a saint, is what you're saying to me right now.
He is very, I mean, he has learned to just let me have my time to myself a lot of times. In fact, he'll take the kids sometimes and go away just so I can have the house to myself, because he knows that that's like my time that I need to kind of recharge, because yeah,
That's the most beautiful and loving thing I've ever heard. When an extrovert
it is.
learns the code, the secret code of happiness for introverts. It's I mean, that really is one of the biggest ingredients for life. I personally am an introvert. I know that's surprising to a lot of people. But those who know me and those who love me, if
Yeah,
like them just leaving me alone is the biggest gift they could give me, and I just love them
right.
so much more for it. It's a weird thing, and it
Yeah.
sounds kind of crazy. Sounds like my giblets are talking. But I mean, and introverts out there are like, "Oh my gosh, yes, please, just don't, just leave me alone."
Exactly.
And the extroverts are like,
Right.
"These
Yeah.
serial killers just want to do weird stuff alone when nobody's watching." But that's good.
It's
That's
just
very
one of
good.
those things.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And I think people automatically think that if you can speak, like if you can teach or if you can speak in front of people, that you must be an extrovert. But
Yeah.
no,
Yep.
like you being a podcaster. I mean, you're a speaker
Yeah.
and that's what you do, but that doesn't mean that you want to like tell everybody how your day went and like get together for parties all the time and have
Yeah.
social events.
Right. And
It's just not like that.
this may be, I mean, the longest a podcast conversation that I have is usually the longest conversation that I've had all week. And
Right.
that's just,
And you'll
that's just how
probably
it
not
is.
talk a lot after this and kind of
Oh
just
no,
regroup.
this is it. This is over. I'm gonna go
Yep. Yep.
hide under a blanket and cuddle some cats after this. cuddle cuddle some cats and admire some beans that I have growing in pots. So that's the rest
With
of my night.
flamingo-headed things
Yeah,
on straws. Good
right.
job. Good job.
I'm definitely going to post a picture. If not on Facebook, I'll throw it in the Patreon. So all those
There
Patreon
you go.
supporters, they get the secret
That's right.
JPEGs. You get those sweet JPEGs in the Patreon. I guess
Right.
I've never actually mentioned that. I'll mention it now because I'll definitely forget later. Patreon supporters, I know you've been seeing some fun stuff in there, and it's kind of just become, along with bonus episodes, just a place for me to put fun stuff. So if you're interested in that, you can head over to patreon.com. The Joy Spears Theory. But back to the matter at hand. I will definitely make those available somewhere. Um,
Okay.
this
Beans
is
crawling up. I mean, go ahead.
yeah, that was my beans talking.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
okay. This is something that I love asking people, and we're definitely going to get to some more traditional Joy Spiracy conversations here in a second, but I'm sure we'll do it in
Yep.
a new and wonderful way. But what's one of the things that the Lord's been talking to you about recently?
Oh, like stepping out of my comfort zone. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, doing this podcast. Yeah, that's completely out of my comfort zone.
You think so? This is not
Um,
normally something you would do,
oh,
huh? I mean, I know not everybody gets
no, no.
the opportunity or the unction to go on a podcast, but you were very lackadaisical when I mean, we've been talking for months. As anybody who's been on this show knows, it takes a couple months to like make it through the system and get on.
Yeah, right.
And we must have been talking since January, maybe even 2017. I don't remember, something like that.
It was 2017. Yeah,
Oh
I
yeah,
think I first messaged you in like, I don't even know, somewhere late summer or early fall last year.
yeah, something like
So, but
October
it was like
is
a
ringing a
one-time
bell.
thing, and like I never like followed up because I was like, meh, don't care, not
Well, right,
really. I
and
just don't.
And even when I hit you back a couple of times, I mean, we've been talking back and forth and scheduling. Again, anybody
Right.
who's been on the show knows scheduling's a fun game to play with Basil. Um,
Right.
it was just like, hey, what do you think about this week? You'd be like, yeah, I mean, that's great. Whatever, whenever you want. I mean, I don't care. Whatever. like,
Right.
like, huh, okay, all
Yep.
right.
That's my life. That's my life. Yep.
which is now I will say you are this was an abnormal case. Usually doesn't take 6 months to get on the show, but when you're not bugging me or reminding me and are just very passive about it, it takes about 6 months. But
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
so that's great. The Lord's been kind of pushing you into, I will say in this case, very safe areas outside of your comfort zone.
Yes, but also, so at the church that I'm at now, so I have done like 1,000 different things at my old church. Like I was a worship leader, I was a youth leader, I was over women's ministry at one point in time, I was over kids ministry at one point in time. So like I've worn so many different hats.
Right.
And when we left that church, because God just kind of closed that door and said, it's time for you to leave, we went to a church that we knew, it was one that we had visited when we were separated. And like God spoke super clearly to us then that we were supposed, like the message was about Jonah and running from your calling. And this was right around the time when we'd gotten back together, but we were still kind of like, do we still want to go back to that church and, deal with all of like what people were saying or the rumors or whatever. And so, running from your calling. And our pastor had just asked us the week before to take over the youth ministry positions. And we were like, we need to pray about that.
Ooh,
and so when
the
we heard this message,
big call from the pastor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And your response is always, can I pray about that? Because you're going, I don't know about this. This is not for me. But after hearing this message, we're like, okay, well, that was like a pretty clear slap in the face. But what was bizarre was it was like that message was so directed at us. And then at the end, the main pastor for that church stood up and he said, okay, so I don't ever do this. This is really strange, but I really feel compelled to say this, that if, you may be here this morning and you may not be, you may be a part of another church and you need to go back to that place. God has a place for you there. But when the time comes, this may be the home that he's calling you to. And my jaw hit the floor because I was kind of like, what? He doesn't know us. Like it was a big church and nobody there knew us. Nobody had any idea what the situation was. So as soon as the door closed for us on the youth ministry at our church, we're like, okay, back to this church we go. And sure enough, like God just really confirmed it over and over and over again that that's exactly where he wanted us to be. So it's been really an awesome thing. And so back to the whole comfort zone thing, I have been asked to take over
just real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's in my nature.
No, you're fine.
That is the most like friendly and like gentle and beautiful way that God could have handled that situation. I mean, I've heard so many stories of just brutal departures from churches and, getting super fired up about a new church and just getting sucked in and which is not bad. I'm just saying usually that's how the story goes, but to be given like a word from the pastor without even knowing it was you or anything, and especially out of character for him, just like, hey, it's cool. I mean, you don't gotta rush anything, but we're this is where it will be here.
I know,
when you're
like
ready.
I was thinking, I've never heard a pastor say anything like that ever in my entire life.
Me
so
neither.
I was kind of just thinking, okay, God, we hear you. We get the point. We're running from our calling. We will leave now and come back later. So yeah.
Yeah, if God could be that gentle and friendly all the time, it'd be fantastic.
But right. But I also think it's because I'm kind of stupid about hearing from the Lord. So he has to kind of hit me in the face with stuff like that. It's kind of like, slam, here you go. I am speaking to you. If you don't get this, then I don't know what else I'm going to do.
That's right.
He kind of makes himself obvious.
You've gotten some pretty clear messages over the years. There's not a whole lot of decoding involved in a lot of the
Right.
messages you've gotten from the Lord. Okay, I'm sorry I
He,
interrupted. So
he knows. No, that's okay. He knows I'm mentally slow and I need that.
he's
The
speaking
brain tumor did that.
speaking straight to your giblets. He's
That's
like, I need
right.
to make this.
Um,
Don't startle her. You got to make it nice and calm and lure her in. You
that's
catch
right.
more bees with honey. That's very good. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So they have asked me to like take over this ministry that they kind of started. So since we've been there, we were meeting in a middle school originally and doing like setup and tear down of everything in this middle school gym. And we were doing 2 services there. And like the church has grown, like doubled in size since we have come. And we actually are in a permanent space now. And so we're able to kind of do more community minded ministry based out of that building. And just like discipleship ministry, because we have an actual place that we can meet at any point in time during the week, not just on Sundays. And so this, what they've asked me to step in and take over is what they call labs. And so once a month, either myself or I will find people to teach on specific topics like parenting or marriage or how to study your Bible, or like in a couple weeks, a friend of mine and I will be doing one on prayer. And so, yeah, it's just, and while that may not seem like a lot, I'm kind of like, I suck at administrative stuff. I don't know if you want me to take that over, but like, since God has been like urging me to step out of my comfort zone since January, and somebody approached me about this like shortly after, I'm going, okay, I hear you, Lord. I understand, but I need you to do this because I completely can't. This is not my strong point. And so he's going, do you trust me? Do you trust me? And I'm having to, just remind myself that he is a trustworthy God and that I can trust him and do things that I'm not necessarily comfortable in, but that he'll do great things whenever I'm just obedient,
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's just such a
Yep.
beautiful way that he's been handling old Bean Brain over there. That's great.
That's right. That's right.
So okay, so we're a little bit past the 1 hour mark here.
Okay.
And I'm
So
curious.
do we need to go weird?
Well, so yeah, and this is a part of the show that, I mean, this is when, so everything up until this point in the show, and I'm just getting real meta with the show this episode, because this isn't just my show. This is everybody who listens and everybody who's on this. This is a shared experience. I feel this is not just Basil
Right.
putting out another thing. But it occurred to me that the second half of the show is probably the most alienating part of the show for somebody who just happens to stumble upon this show, who hasn't found me through Canary Cry or through, any number of the other, podcasters or references in kind of
Right.
the normal genre that I operate in. And I've gotten some
Right.
emails from listeners who have either found me on iTunes and thought, oh, this sounds nice. And then the second half of the show, they're like, what in the world are these people talking about? So maybe it's just my way into tricking them into listening to my other stuff.
It's that same way that God speaks to me. It's the gentle way of just gently guiding them towards these things. Yeah, that's all it is.
But so far, I'm committed to sticking with my original genre, the original infrastructure of this show, my original listeners that I love, who have found me through Canary Cry Radio or any other number of things like that. So I am curious. Yeah. You seem so well adjusted. You've had so many things happen in life. You've got such a wonderful attitude about everything. And how in the world did it come into your intellectual view, peripheral, well, on the right side of your periphery, about, things like biblical prophecy, and some of the more nefarious things going on in the world.
Okay. So it's really interesting. When I was a kid, there was this commercial that came on TV. So I was a very scared kid. Like I was scared of everything. And my mom was always like, I don't know why you're so scared. I was the first girl. And so they kind of chalked it up to just me being an emotional wreck most of the time.
Wow, that's
But
interesting.
yeah. But as like a baby, my mom said that I would just cry a lot. Like she said, I often thought that there would be something in your room. And so I was kind of, I don't know. I don't remember being a baby, so I can't speak to that necessarily. But when I was like 6 years old, there was this video, or it was a commercial that came on TV for like Time Life, unexplained mysteries or
Oh
unsolved mysteries or
yeah,
something like that.
unsolved
This book
mysteries.
series or whatever. Okay, so Time Life had this book series and it talked about witches and aliens and all this kind of stuff. And so I remember seeing the commercial and it just like made me petrified. And my oldest brother, because he's a jerk, he looked at me and he said, that stuff's real, right? Witches are real. And I was like, oh, what? And so I went to my mom, like I went running there, Mom, Scott just told me that witches are real. And she goes, well, they are, but they're not like the green people with warts on their nose like you see in cartoons. They're just really bad people that are worshiping Satan. And
Oh
so
my
that was like,
gosh.
that's like, soft disclosure for sure to your child that's like 6 years old and scared of everything. Oh yeah,
Oh
witches are real. No,
no.
no big. Just go play. So
No
yeah,
big
that was
deal.
like my first.
They're not green and have warts or anything. They're just much worse
That's
than that, and they're coming for
right,
you.
right. Just like you and me, you can't tell the difference. And I'm going, what? Are you serious?
Oh
This can't be
no.
real. She's like, they don't fly around on broomsticks or anything. You don't have to worry. I'm thinking, what are you talking about?
But they could
You
be
just wrecked my
anywhere.
world. Right. And so I was like, what about aliens? She goes, oh, they're just demons. And I'm thinking, are you serious? Those are real too? So I grew up in a home that, like, my mom, I don't know why, she's just always had that kind of like, she could speak to something like truth, but it was just like, this is life and we will deal with it. And I think that kind of like always made me more skeptical anytime I heard anything about like conspiracy type stuff. And my dad being a long distance truck driver, he listened to all kinds of crazy stuff on the road. And so he would come home and tell us things like, oh, yeah, the mark of the beast is going to be a chip and they're already trying it. And the lithium battery in it is going to make a grievous sore on your hand, all this kind of stuff. So
Wow.
like I heard it growing up. So it was not like, this has not really been like a new thing for me. It's just sort of as an adult when you like see how things, when you can research it for yourself and you see a lot of these things that are true, it's kind of it could bring you down, I guess, if you dwell there. But like you just have to remember, like God's in control of all of this, and He knows what's going on, and He's working it all out. And you don't see what's going on in His space, and what He's doing all the time. So yeah, that's kind of how I stumbled on to the whole conspiracy thing. I was just born into it, and even more interesting, my mom was approached by the CIA to be like, they were trying to get her to be in the CIA when she was in high school.
What?
And yeah, apparently this was a big thing. She was in high school in like the late 60s, and they came to her school and they would like give out a test to everybody in the school, and people who scored certain things they would pull and like do interviews with. And
What?
then they would do like a background check and they would talk to their neighbors and things like that. And so my mom was like, I was so excited because I was going to go work for the CIA, except one of my neighbors lied and said I got pregnant and moved, like came to North Carolina to have a baby because her brother lived here, and
Oh
then
my
came back
gosh.
for school. And so she said because there were people that were saying things like that, she wasn't approved, but one of her friends was, and she never heard from her again. So
No
I
way.
think, yeah. So my mom could have been working for the bad guys, but
That's crazy. What
I know.
I'm sure she doesn't have any actual information about like what it was they wanted her
Oh,
for, or
no, she had no idea. She said that they just came, like they came to the school and they literally tested everybody in their school. But she grew up in West Virginia in like this tiny, tiny town in West Virginia where almost everybody was like super duper poor. So I'm kind of glad my mom did not get into the CIA
well,
because I probably
yeah.
wouldn't exist. Like I would not be here, you
Well,
know?
and and even weirder, the fact that, they didn't say this, but by extrapolation, they had a problem with her not being a virgin or something is like even
Right?
weirder. I don't
Exactly.
like that.
I know you have no idea what they were doing, but it was just this really bizarre thing. And she thought it was like crushing to her to find out that she didn't make it
Oh
into
my
the
gosh. Well,
CIA. But
yeah, that's the coolest thing you could ever even imagine as a kid.
right, you
Especially
think you're going
coming
to be a
from a
spy or something.
yeah, especially coming from like a poor area and, not really seeing a future, especially as a kid. You don't know what you're going to do anyways, but things do seem
Exactly.
kind of impossible no matter how high in the clouds your dreams are. That's crazy. My goodness. Well,
Right.
I'm glad that she imagine that a lying Snoopy neighbor actually
I
may have
know.
saved her life.
Exactly. And she's very thankful for that now. But she's like, I don't know why they had to say things that were not true. But anyway, yeah.
Wow,
But the
so
other
yeah,
side,
so it was kind of coming from both sides. It wasn't just, crazy truck driver dad listening to Coast all day long and coming back and
right.
telling you about it. This was you're kind of born into it then.
Yes. And then also my father's family, he was born in the mountains of North Carolina, and they were like some of his uncles were like warlocks. They
Oh,
were heavy into the occult, and he said that when he was a child, he went hunting with his uncle and his dad, and they like my he said his uncle did some kind of spell, charm, something or other, and like a whirlwind came up in the woods and ran out a deer, and the uncle shot it and said, "This is how we hunt." And so,
what?
right. I mean, and this is the kind of stuff I hear when I'm a kid. And so I think, okay, my family's really screwed up. They have magic powers.
Wow.
So, yeah. And apparently my grandfather, who he passed away when I was like 7 years old, but he he was very much into that kind of stuff. Like he thought that when my brother had like chicken pox or something, he needed to come and like slit the throat of a rooster and dribble the blood on the porch steps or something. I'm not really sure what it was,
Wow.
but there was some kind of like he was really into this stuff. So I'm kind of glad that he passed away when he did. And I know that sounds terrible, but I can't imagine the influence he might have had on me or on, my other siblings. And
Yeah.
my my oldest brother says that he actually did have an influence on him and he was doing all kinds of like my oldest brother's like he was really involved in he just I don't know, he stayed in his room a lot. He listened to all kinds of like crazy music and stuff when he was a kid, and his room was right beside mine, so I would hear that same music all night long, and I'm thinking, oh God, I just do not want to hear this. This is not what I need to hear. And so, but he, like, my brother was just mean all the time, all the time. And he just told me, like, probably, I think it was around Christmas or Thanksgiving or something, that he honestly was considering, like, being involved in that lifestyle and following in my grandfather's footsteps because my grandfather really wanted to push that, push him into that as a kid. And so, um, again, thankful my grandfather passed away when I was young because I don't think I would want that kind of influence. But I do, like, I'm extra careful about allowing my kids to see, like, movies with witch stuff. Like, we don't do Harry Potter or, like, different things like that because I just don't want to give them that desire to even pursue that because of the generational kind of stuff that will be more likely to, seem familiar to them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow.
So lots of
That's
weird stuff for sure.
yeah, well, it's so interesting and something again, just going to be kind of meta, but especially well, I'll put in the context of this conversation. It's always amazing the more you talk to people, you you piece lives together in layers. You can't
Hmm.
tell everything chronologically, but the more little things you hit there, that you see these different layers going on all at the same time. I mean, your
Yeah.
dad's having you got bees in the backyard, and you sounds really
Yeah.
nice, but then there's old chicken cutter grandpa walking around.
That's right. I mean, yeah, it sounds very bizarre. Yeah. And like my grandmother didn't think that you could cut hair or fingernails except like on specific days, and you had to gather up everything and burn it because if somebody got your fingernails or your hair, they could cast a spell on you.
Yeah, that's
So,
interesting.
yeah,
That's a Native American belief, I believe, or at
right,
least it maybe it could be parallel thinking, but I know that
right.
certain groups of Native Americans think that same thing. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, that it kind of fits my again completely ignorant view of what sort of Appalachian sort of East Coast occult
Yes.
stuff would include.
Right. Yeah. It was kind of a blend, I think. A lot of people just refer to it as mountain magic, but it's just occultic stuff. And I think some of that probably bled into, Native American practices, or maybe some of the Native American stuff blended into whatever these people were bringing from Scotland and Ireland when they came here. So I don't know.
Wow, that's so interesting. So it was certainly weird stuff was certainly a part of your life for a while. So I'm sure whenever
Yep.
you heard about whatever the New World Order or none of that was a surprise to you.
No, that was like old news. When I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, my dad's been talking about that for life. It's just, yeah, we know, New World Order, George Bush, he said it, and so did so and blah, blah,
Right.
blah. But even more interesting, and this is random, but we did like my father did his little DNA thing. How about he is a descendant of King Henry VIII?
No way.
Yes.
Wow.
So, like if you talk about like royalty, Nephilim kind of stuff, then
That is
it would
so
be hilarious.
interesting. Oh
Yeah,
man, we got to keep an eye on you is what we got to
I
do.
know. I know. I mean, if I take my glasses off, you might see my lizard eyes.
Well, you're in good company because I'm a very good CIA shill. I can tell you that. I can send you
I'm
many
sure.
YouTube reference videos about how good I am as a CIA shill.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you're amazing. And that's why you're rolling in the dough and need to give all this airtime to things like Whole 30.
Yeah, exactly. Rolling in the dough, going to the dollar store for my gardening supplies.
Yeah.
They treat me well over there. Well, that's so funny. Just out of
Yeah.
curiosity, when did you find Canary Cry Radio?
Okay. So I think I found it, I think it was like it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago. Um, okay, 3 years ago, when the whole September of 2015 thing was going on, and Gons had done a YouTube video on the 27 or however many things that are supposed to happen in September of 2015.
Yep.
And so at the time I was working for a pregnancy care center, like, the crisis pregnancy center kind of place, as the administrative manager. And my boss was talking a whole lot about like Jonathan Kahn and the Shemitah, blah, 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 harbingers and all that kind
Yep.
of stuff.
Yep.
And I kind of read the book and I was like, meh, this may be true. I have no idea. But I didn't really put a lot of stock into it. But I thought, well, I'm going to like do some research. And so I Googled like events happening September 2015. And his video was like the first thing that popped up. And so I watched that and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And he kind of plugged Canary Cry there. And so that was when I started listening to Canary Cry. And so I think I listened backwards to everything within like 2 months because I was like, these guys are great. They are hilarious. And I love this. And this is what I've been missing my whole life. So, yeah.
So what you're
Yeah,
saying is we complete you.
that's right. I don't know what I would do without you guys.
Well,
It's amazing.
that's great. Are you a part of the Canary Cry community there on Facebook yet?
I am. I don't
Okay.
participate a ton though because
And
I'm like Facebook is just not my thing all the
no,
time, you
I'm
know?
the same way. It's just fun to watch, though.
Oh yeah,
Also,
for sure. I love all the memes. Like I was playing with some of the memes and posting a lot like when we first started, but I've
yeah.
kind of just gone, yeah, I have life outside of Facebook too. So
It's a dangerous place. It's a great place to
it
connect
is.
to people, especially over there at the community. But yeah,
Yeah,
you got more important things to think about right now. But it's always there, waiting, calling to
that's
you.
right.
That's
It's
awesome.
fun.
We almost have. I think we have a little over 900 members now. That's it's
Wow.
blowing up over there. I know.
Yeah.
One of these days, I'll get the energy to start doing that stuff for the Joyspiracy theory, and I'm sure you'll help me out with that.
Yeah,
You'll
I'll be
put
glad to
all the
do.
rest of your life aside to help me out with that.
That's exactly right. I will devote hours a day just to help you because I have nothing better to do.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, so that's very, 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 and that just gives a whole new angle to, like I said before. I mean, you just surprisingly, and I mean this in the most loving way, surprisingly, you seem pretty well adjusted.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't I don't know. I think that there is a place that you can dwell where you are, the tinfoil hat wearer, or you can go, yeah, I know all that stuff. And yes, it concerns me, but God is still God. And so I'm not gonna like just hang out in that space of crazy and try and come up with 8,000 new theories, you know?
Yeah.
I think, I think like there are seasons when I'm more interested in that, like with the whole pedogate thing last year, I did a lot of investigating on my own there and saw entirely too much and did not want to, wish I could kind of scrub that stuff from my brain. But I think that being aware and being knowledgeable is not a bad thing, but you have to put it in perspective, and that's why I love this podcast because it does that. It gives you the joyful things that you can kind of frame your thoughts around as opposed to just like staying in that place of the world is against me, everyone is the enemy, right? So
Right, exactly. Well, that's good. Speaking of being level-headed and everything like that, what kind of furry animals you got running around there?
well, we have since we just moved into this house like a little over a year ago, we had a dog when we were at our old house, but we downsized like pretty big. We were in 2,400 square feet at our old house, and we've moved into like a 988 square foot house with 5 people. So it's a little bit tighter than what we were used to. So we do not
Yeah,
have
wow.
animals here. Yeah, so we have my mom's dog is next door, and then we are getting chickens soon,
Oh
and we
yeah. North
yeah, we have
Carolina,
that's
baby.
right. We will have our chickens in our backyard for our eggs. Yeah, for sure. So we just put our chicken coop up, I think like last week, and we are gonna order chickens so we get good layers because we
That's
want
awesome.
very good eggs. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But we
Wow.
have bunny rabbits in our yard and fun things like that. And ducks. We have ducks here too.
Are they pets or are they wild animals?
Well, we have a lake across from our house, so they live at the lake, but they come over here and we feed them corn
Oh
all the
yeah. That'll do
Yep,
it. That'll do it.
they love us.
Okay, you got to explain this keto thing to me. I've never had anybody explain it to me. I had well, no, okay, no, we're getting into keto right now. Uh, I've never had anybody explain it to me. I had a dog named Keto when I was younger, so
Nice.
it's just bringing back all sorts of warm and fuzzies. But I know it probably has nothing to do with my childhood pet.
No, unfortunately, it does not. So keto is short for ketogenesis or ketogenic. Yeah. And maybe ketogenesis. I'm not really sure. I'm not all that well versed. Like I said, I'm on day 3. So
Okay,
it's not like I'm the expert,
sure.
but basically you are supposed to consume lots of fats and like 20 grams or less of carbohydrates, and then about half of the amount of fats that you are consuming, you need to consume that in protein. And there's this whole calculator thing that you can go in and put your weight and your height and your age and whether you're male or female, and it'll give you your macros, which is this whole thing with, how many calories and carbs and protein and fats you're supposed to consume. But I kind of suck at this because I cannot eat that much food, and I certainly cannot eat that much fat every day.
That
It is
sounds
just,
really complicated.
yeah, okay, but you can eat pretty much anything. I mean, it's really a broad spectrum thing. There's people who are strict keto, people that are like, you can only eat fish and you can only eat chicken or whatever, and only vegetables for your carbohydrates and occasional dairy, but you don't need that much dairy. And me being allergic to dairy, I'm like, I can't have any of that stuff. And I'm allergic to coconut, and you're supposed to have like a boatload of coconut oil every day. And so I'm kind of like, well, avocado oil do. I have to sub in all this extra stuff. But I've lost like 9 pounds, and I don't even have that much weight to lose.
In
So I'm
3
like,
days?
I know it's really scary, but
That's crazy.
I know. Trust me. I joined a group on Facebook, and I messaged them. I'm like, is this normal? They're like, oh yeah, that's water weight. It's completely normal. And I'm going, but I'm not like obese or anything. Like I could just stand to lose a little bit of weight. And so they're like, no, it's
so
perfectly normal.
funny.
I know.
Wow.
It's a little weird, but
Okay,
whatever.
well now I know. I'll have to take a look at it. Heck, 9 pounds in 3 days. Get rid of that water weight, baby.
I know. I don't think it's water weight, just to be honest. I think it's because I'm eating like 900 calories a day and barely existing at the moment.
Yeah, well, that certainly has something to do with it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious. Is there anything that's just been laying on your heart that you would that you just promised yourself you would share, or something that you feel the Lord wanting to share with people out there?
I think that I can, as I have listened to a lot of the Joyspiracy theory episodes, I have related with so many people on these episodes. I mean, I haven't talked about a whole lot of the things that I've experienced in my life just because I don't want to like go down the poor, sad, woe is me paths,
Sure, yeah.
but like, experiencing different types of abuses and, different addictions that I battled and things like that. I have related so much to so many of the people that you've had on here. And so I just, every time that I've listened to that, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like that. Yeah, I get you, and so I think that it's really, really great that you have created a podcast that has kind of made a community of people that can feel like they're not the only ones that have lived through this, or like the whole thing with sleep paralysis. I had that when I was little, and I'm like, I didn't have any idea what was going on. But, when I would get up, when I would finally come out of it and go tell my mom, she's like, oh no, just say Jesus and it'll go away. And it was like, she just automatically knew this. Like, I don't know how, but she just knew, just say Jesus and they'll leave you alone. And I'm like,
so
that was just
interesting.
normal.
That's so funny. Your mom is such a funny person.
Yeah, she's like, I guess I get this from her, but I'm kind of the overly logical, overly analytical kind of person.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that's the reason why she was always like that, like, oh yeah, this is how it is, and this is what you do, and going back to bed, like this is not even a thing. So yeah, in fact, I used to, when it would happen, and when I would be afraid that was going to happen at night, I would like lay flat on my back and cross my arms on my chest, because I'm like, if I don't ever wake up, I want my parents to find me looking like you and you're in a coffin. It's
Oh
really terrible. I know, it's terrible,
no.
but yeah, that was
what an interesting portrait of just like the weird neuroses of children,
Exactly.
I mean, it's totally relatable. I mean, I think I had similar thing, much different, but same sort of like level of weird neuroses as a child.
And here I am telling everybody about it. Most people don't bother with that. But yeah.
Only here on the Joyspiracy theory, folks.
Right. You heard it here first. No, but I just think that I would encourage anybody who's listening to understand that no matter what you're walking through, you're not doing it alone if you have Jesus. And if you don't have Jesus, you can easily gain access to him. All you have to do is ask for him to be a part of your life and to make himself known to you. And to anybody like who feels like they're going through something nobody else has gone through, it's not true. That so many people who are listening to this or who have been on this show have experienced a lot of the same kind of things that you have. And so there's hope. There is a way to walk away from these situations or walk through them and have joy and have hope, and experience that in a way that you never have before, and be able to get to the other side and tell people your story so that you can continue, that testimony of how God pulls people through stuff. So yeah, that's what I'd like to say.
Amen, sister. Amen. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has just been a truly delightful conversation.
Oh, I'm so glad to be on here, and sorry I was kind of lackadaisical and not staying on you about trying to get on the show.
Hey, no, I would apologize even more for doing the same thing, and it's a testament out there for everybody who has sent me an email or a Facebook message, and it's a slow-moving process, but it will happen. It will happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Rhonda, thank you so much. And say hi to your wonderful hubby for me. And hey, when those chickens show up, you got to let me know, because that could be my next project over here. I'm already got the beans on lockdown. Chickens might be my next project.
There you go. That's what you need, so you can have fresh eggs every morning. It'll be delicious.
It's making your North Carolina accent come out, just talking about chickens.
Exactly. That's what you have to do.
All right. Well, you have a wonderful night, and we will catch up again one of these days.
Okay. Thanks, Basil.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed that episode, because I certainly did. I know I say that all the time, but it's so true. I just enjoy this doing this show so much. Well, I just want to let you guys know that once again, over on the Patreon app or the Patreon website, patreon.com/thejoyspiracy I'm doing a new experiment called Ask Baz, and you can get access to those episodes for as little as $1 a month, for just the price of a cup of, I don't even know what you could buy a cup of for $1, but it's just a fun thing I'm doing over there. People send in their questions for me, whether it's about life or faith or my personal life or politics or joy or whatever it is. You can go over there and listen to that. I actually had a really good time recording it. I actually just did it today, and it got posted, so it's a good time. Go check it out. Oh, I want to thank everybody who leaves the iTunes reviews. It is so helpful. I cannot express enough how important it is to get those iTunes reviews and ratings. A rating is anywhere from 1 to 5 stars. 1 star is I was just walking around having a wonderful day and I fell in a creek full of alligators. That's a 1 star. 5 stars is you're just walking around having a wonderful day and fall into a big pile of money. Yep, that's 5 stars. The Joyspiracy Theory is like falling into a big pile of money, baby. Okay. Well, if you could go to iTunes or iTunes.com or whatever you listen to this on and leave a positive review, that would be awesome. And everybody heading over to Facebook, I know you're heading to Facebook sometime today. Make sure to go to the Joyspiracy Theory on Facebook and like that page. Let me know what you guys think. I just love hearing from you. And if you want, you can go to thejoyspiracytheory.com and leave a voicemail message. Got a little tab on the right-hand side. You can leave a message on any device. You can do it on your phone. You can do it on your iPad. You can do it on your computer, however you want to do it. Okay. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for stopping by this time. And remember, when you're walking around just and having a wonderful day, the only thing better is falling into a big pile of money. Okay, bye.